The infamous Mel Kiper has released Mock Draft 2.0, and there's a lot of surprises to say the least. So today we're going to run through that and mock the mock. Now we're a couple days removed, but it would be disingenuous and I would be remiss not to send my condolences to the family, friends, everybody affected by Rondale Moore's passing. I remember covering him at Purdue. I remember grading the player. Electric, that might even be an understatement. That electricity translated to the NFL, and unfortunately, we didn't get to see more of the incredible athlete that Rondale Moore was. I do want to say, if you need help, please go get it. Now, Mel Kiper promised craziness in his first round, and well, that's on display early, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. Now, if you're wondering what you're looking at, on the left side of your screen, you'll see my Mock Draft 1.0, which was released on this channel just about a week and a half ago. On the middle of your screen, you'll have Mel Kiper's Mock Draft 2.0, which again was released this week. Now, the numbers beside Mel Kiper's boxes, it's fairly simple. It's just the differences on where he has a player getting drafted compared to myself. So I wanted to see the differences, what we had in common, etc., etc. That is not really important to you guys, but if you're interested, hey, there's a thing we can look at. And number one for the both of us, of course, we both had Fernando Mendoza. No explanation needed. Now, the draft starts at number 2 with the New York Jets. And personally, I think the safe floor and very high ceiling potential of Ruben Bain should be the direction that Aaron Glenn goes to get the centerpiece of that defensive front. However, Mel Kiper thought differently, and he looked at a Jets defense that had 0 interceptions last season. For Aaron Glenn, who had over 40 interceptions in his NFL career, a guy that was with the Jets for many, many years when he was a player and, of course, now a coach, that's unprecedented. That was not on the bingo card, and I can guarantee you that. So Mel Kiper says that Aaron Glenn's going to be aggressive, and he's going to get a guy that can force turnovers, create big plays for the defense, but also do a little bit of everything at such a high level. And when you look at the talent of the player, Caleb Downs makes a lot of sense. At number 2 overall to the Jets, on one hand, you're drafting a safety at number 2. That has pretty much never been done this high in the first round of the draft. But on the flip side of that, you're getting the most talented player in the class, and he's my number 1 player on my entire big board. Not to spoil things, but I think that's a foregone conclusion. He's the best safety prospect we've seen maybe of all time. And for him to go number 2 to the Jets, I think Jets fans, of course you would like to see a position more so of value in the NFL, but the talent of the player is undeniable, and he should be an all-pro level player for his entire career. And number 3, I took Spencer Fanu for the Arizona Cardinals. He went David Bailey, getting the best talent available on the board in many's eyes. It's hard to argue with that selection. For the Cardinals team that needs so much help across the entire roster, getting the best player available is never a bad way to go. So now you're getting David Bailey on that defensive line next to Walter Nolan. They have a young group that is growing together, and they should be dominant for years to come. At number 4, we both had Robert Saleh, now coach of the Tennessee Titans, taking Arvell Reese. He's a defensive-minded coach. He gets the ultimate defensive wild card there for that exciting Titans defense. The Titans, if they continue to have a great draft and offseason, they might be that team that goes worst to first in this division next season. And I know that sounds crazy, but the same could have been said about the Patriots and or the Jags from last year. And number 5, I disregarded the injury concerns, and I said, looking at the player, if he tests well, if the medicals come back relatively clean about Jordan Tyson, he's a smash pick at number 5 overall for that New York offense that might lose Wan'Dale Robinson this offseason. Mel Kiper said, hey, John Harbaugh's coming in. When you look at Harbaugh's entirely in their coaching career, whether Jim, John, it's all meat and potatoes. It all starts up front to set the tone, and then they go outward, right? They dominate the trenches, and then they'll fill out the rest of the roster. So Kiper, with that mentality, went Spencer Fanu, a guy that could play 4 positions on the offensive front for a rebuilding New York Giants offense. And hey, he's going to help a whole heck of a lot getting Jackson Dart clean pockets. And number 6 to my Cleveland Browns, I went offensive line because that is a desperate need there for Shedeur Sanders. But he went Carnell Tate. Carnell Tate is definitely in the conversation for being the best receiver on the board when you account for health and dominance over his collegiate career. Carnell Tate, it's hard to match as far as this class. But hey, I didn't have him as my number one wide receiver. In fact, I had him at number three. At seven, we both had Sonny Styles, a true wild card piece for Dan Quinn on this defense. He might be the most talented and well-rounded linebacker in this class. And for a guy like Dan Quinn that has always had a Deion Jones in Atlanta or Bobby Wagner in the recent years here in Washington, he loves his dominant Mike linebackers, so Sonny Styles makes a lot of sense. And finally, at number eight, we both had the Saints going wide receivers. I had Tate, he had Mekhi Lemon. Now, the Chiefs are an interesting team because, of course, they came off of years and years of Super Bowl appearances, AFC title appearances, and just straight dominance, especially in close time games. This past year was a bit of the script got flipped, and I'll just leave it at that because they missed the playoffs. And not only did they miss the playoffs, they were one of the bottom 9 teams in the entire NFL. But that also comes with a positive because you get to get your hands on such a talented prospect that can bolster up any part of your roster next season. For me, I had them taking David Bailey. I think they can get help on that defensive front. But Mel Kiper said Isaiah Pacheco, Kareem Hunt, they're both on their way out of the building. We need a running back. Let's go out there and get maybe a generational talent at the running back position in Jeremiah Love. This offense with Bieniemy back running the mix, they're going to run the ball more so than they have in recent years. And it all starts with having that bell cow running back. So I love Jeremiah Love to the Chiefs. He's going to be a bell cow from day number one. I know I said that word a lot. Regardless, at number 10, the Bengals, they need help everywhere, and especially on defense. I had them going Caleb Downs. He has them getting Ruben Bain, potentially the best defensive player in this entire class, falls to number 10. The Bengals get an absolute steal. At number 11, I had the Miami Dolphins going with a cornerback. Kiper had Francis Maui Noah. I think simply here, he was just saying best player, best talent available, a guy that could go in the top 5 of this draft, falls to number 11, and he can be the protector, the blindside tackle, whether if it's Tua, whether if it's Quinn Ewers, or a quarterback of your choosing down the line. It all starts up front, and in a division where you see teams like the Bills and the Patriots that dominate the trenches, you got to help out your team in that regard somehow, some way. So I don't hate the Francis Maui Noah pick at number 11. I do think he's going to go a bit higher than that spot. Now, the Cowboys need defensive back help because the Trayvon Diggs era, of course, is over. I went Jermod McCoy. He went Mansour Delane. If Mansour Delane was on the board, I would also go that way for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, the only difference here in our mock drafts, I had one trade in my first mock drafts where I had Jeremiah Love was still on the board. I had the Vikings trading up for him, swapping picks with the LA Rams. So that's why the number 13 picks, as far as the teams, are a bit different. But at 13, he had the LA Rams, which I do think they need a cornerback, and I had them grabbing one down the board. He will have them taking Jermod McCoy at number 13. Now, for Jermod McCoy, of course, last year didn't play, but incredible tape 2 years ago as far as a physical corner that checks all the boxes. He does exactly that, and he had great tape, again, just a few years ago. It was the one injury that might turn some people off from drafting the Tennessee Volunteer. At 14, the Ravens need help pretty much everywhere. I went Peter Woods, in my eyes, was the best interior defensive lineman in the class. He went Jordan Tyson, and I don't honestly hate this pick. Obviously, I have Jordan Tyson going in my top 5. Kiper has him falling to 14, and for him to go in that offense with a new play caller, new head coach, with Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman and potentially Isaiah Likely coming back into the mix, all of a sudden Lamar has the deepest wide receiver room of his entire career. At 15, Cassius Howell, which Mel Kiper, spoiler, didn't have in his entire first round. I had him going there because all the beat reporters, and it seems like Todd Bowles loves Cassius Howell, so that's kind of why I fed into this pick here at number 15. But he has them going C.J. Allen, and it makes a lot of sense. With Levante David getting up there in age, you don't have Devin White anymore. You need that linebacker for the future that can call the shots, but be a violent tone setter in a division that is in desperate need of those. I think C.J. Allen at 15 makes a lot of sense. And I'll say this. Hey, I thought I had C.J. Allen going earlier than most people, and we'll talk about that in a moment. but he has him going into the top 15. Of course, I'm talking about Mel Kiper. At 16 for the Jets, I had him going Mekhi Lemon. He had him going Peter Woods. So if you look on my side of the coin, I had the Jets getting Ruben Bain and Mekhi Lemon, and he had the Jets getting Caleb Downs and Peter Woods, two guys that can transform that defense pretty much overnight. Moving on to the tail end of the first round, and we'll start with pick 17, as we both know that the Lions need help on the other side of Aiden Hutchinson. I went with TJ Parker. Personally, he's my third highest edge on the board, and he would be drafted as such here. He went Zion Young, a physical freak out of Missouri. Makes a lot of sense. I'm just not as high as consensus there on Zion Young. But who knows? Maybe he knows a bit more than myself. And maybe all these GMs around the league are saying Zion Young is going to be a top end of the first round pick. At 18, I have the Rams going Avion Terrell. For him, of course, the Vikings would have kept this pick in this world. He had them going Dylan Thieneman. This makes a lot of sense. I sound like a broken record when I say that, but Harrison Smith, I thought last year would have been his last. Last year, I had them taking a safety in last year's a bit loaded class. This year, Harrison Smith looks to be coming back. He's 37 years old, and if last year wasn't the last ride, this year surely is. So Dylan Thieneman out of Oregon, super smart, white safety, but he flies around the field, makes a bunch of plays, definitely could learn a great bit of amount there from Harrison Smith for 1 year, and then take over as the commander of the back end of that Vikings defense. If Brian Flores sticks around, of course, that's a great mind to learn from as well. We both had Keldrick Falk going to the Carolina Panthers, a plug-and-play player from day number one in the division with great running backs that love to run the football. Getting a guy that could set the edge as maybe the best run defender in the class makes a lot of sense for Carolina. At 20, I had a bit of a shocker here, and it looks like so did he. I went with Anthony Hill, a guy that can fill a big void in the middle of that Dallas Cowboys defense where Shamar James is great. I'm a Gators fan. However, Anthony Hill is so much better than a Shamar James, and plus he's not a Mike linebacker. He is an off-ball linebacker that is the best linebacker in coverage in this year's class, flies around, makes a bunch of plays. I explained it in the video, but it makes a lot of sense. Anthony Hill at 20 to the Dallas Cowboys, not to mention he's a top 5 player on my big board. But Akeem Messidor goes to Dallas in Mel Kiper's mock draft. So in this world, they would walk away with Mansour Delane and Akeem Messidor. I think we can tell what side of the ball they're addressing. Just like the New York Jets, their defense should be better night and day going into next season. At 21, I had C.J. Allen to replace a Patrick Queen in the offseason here for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He has Ty Simpson going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Look, if he tests well, though he is very inexperienced, I wouldn't be shocked by this pick. Now, if I was the Steelers GM, would I make the selection? No, because I still believe in Will Howard to be a serviceable quarterback there at the next level, especially with him learning behind Rodgers for this year and potentially next year. So Will Howard, I'm still a believer, so that's why I had the Steelers going defense. Obviously, Mel Kiper doesn't believe in Will Howard. He had them taking Ty Simpson. At 22, we both have Vega Ione there from the Nittany Lions. Fills a big void on the interior of this offensive line for Justin Herbert, who hopefully, if the tackles come back and you bring in Vega, hopefully he's not on the ground almost every single play. And hopefully, when we look at those PFF player intros, not every single one is in the bottom 2 of the entire league. And I'm just never going to forget that moment. If you guys know what I'm talking about, if you guys don't know, rather, one of the primetime games the Chargers had, their entire offensive line, post the injuries, they were rated like the bottom 2, according to PFF, regards to their peers at their position across the entire NFL. So Justin Herbert was going out there with the worst potential offensive line, and rightfully so, he was on the ground a fair amount. At 23, due to beat writers, I had Colton Hood to the Philadelphia Eagles, as they're going to lose Adoree Jackson this offseason. Colton Hood played tremendous for the Tennessee Volunteers this past season. I think he would be a plug-and-play player on that defense from day number 1. But Kenyon Sadiq, in the opinion of Mel Kiper, is going to the Philadelphia Eagles. Of course, Dallas Goedert is going to be a free agent in the coming weeks, and he's probably going to be on a new team. For Philadelphia, I had the thought of maybe go after a Kyle Pitts. Now, since then, Kyle Pitts has been franchise tagged and he is going to go back to Atlanta. So now I still think if Philadelphia doesn't want to bring back a Dallas Goedert, you have the David Njokus of the world out there on the market that you might be able to get for cheap, and you don't have to spend a first round pick on a Kenyon Sadiq. You can wait until the second, third round, where, in my opinion, it's a loaded tight end class. You can get an Eli Stowers. You can get a Michael Trigg down the board. Heck, maybe even a Daquan Wright, which I'm a big fan of. You can get those guys way down the board, and they can still fill that Dallas Goedert void. At 24, we both had the Browns going with offensive talent. I went wide receiver because I had them taking a tackle earlier. He had them going Monroe Freeling. So if you are the Browns, would you rather prefer Francis Maui-Noah and Denzel Boston or Carnell Tate and Monroe Freeling? That is a question for Browns fans in the comment section below. But hey, let's move on to the last 8 of the draft. We both had the Bears going interior defensive front. I went Caleb Banks, as I have him rated higher than a Caden McDonald there from Ohio State. But either or, both are massive human beings, great anchors there in the run game, and fill a big void for a defensive front there in Chicago that needs a lot of help. They need to get younger, and they're playing a lot of teams like the Lions, Vikings, and the Green Bay Packers that love to run the football, especially there late in the season. At 26, we had the Bills going wide receiver. I went KC Recepcion. He went Denzel Boston. Both guys you can't really go wrong with. If you are Buffalo, I think you prefer Denzel Boston, given he's a much bigger wide receiver and has that, wide receiver one size. So if he can grow into that level of a player, it's a huge addition here. And again, it adds a different element to your offense rather than a KC Recepcion, where he's kind of a carbon copy, just a lot more explosive than a Khalil Shakir. At 27, we both had Caden Proctor to the San Francisco 49ers. And look, I thought I was a lot lower on Caden Proctor than most people, but turns out Mel Kiper has him going the same spot as me, way down the board. Now, I love this next selection because I had Caleb Lomu to the Houston Texans. It's boring. He plays a lot of positions. He helps out a big way there for CJ Stroud. But Mel Kiper had a bit of a shocking pick here at the end of the first round. He went with Jadarian Price, and I beg of you now, after this video, go check out our running backs episode. That was, of course, recorded a long time ago, but in that video, I said Jadarian Price looks like Nick Chubb and he runs like Nick Chubb. As far as his accessories, as far as his running style, how he holds the football, just how fast and all the physical tools he brings, he looks like Nick Chubb. And now, though he will probably not be on the same team, Jadarian Price gets to replace a Nick Chubb in an offense that's probably going to lose Joe Mixon this offseason. And hey, they get their bell cow running back because Woody Marks is not really a 3-down guy. So I love Jadarian Price. Is it a bit of an overpay, potentially, for that position and the other offensive line needs that Houston has? But Jadarian Price is definitely a fun pick for that Houston offense. At 29, I had the Rams going Ty Simpson. That's simply because, well, I can't see him falling out of the first round. Do I think he's worth that pick? Probably not. But for Ty Simpson to back up Stafford for 2 or 3 years, the Rams would get his 5th-year option. Again, I think it checks out, makes a lot of sense. But he had the Rams going with Blake Miller there from Clemson, a guy that's getting a lot of hype in recent weeks. But for the Rams, another team that has 2 first-round picks. And in this world, for Mel Kiper, they have Jermod McCoy and a Blake Miller. So Rams fans, let me know what you think. For Broncos, I had Kenyon Sadiq falling into their laps to replace an Evan Ingram. He had Emmanuel McNeil-Warren out of Toledo, a guy that flies around the field, and he's one of the most exciting prospects in this year's class. I think if he tests extremely well there in the combine here in the coming days, he could shoot up draft boards and be a solidified first-round guy. As of right now, I think he's a tweener between day 1 and day 2. I think testing will go a long way for Mr. Warren there out of Toledo. At 31, I went Akeem Mesidor, best player for Mike Vrabel, who just wants guys that can plug and play from day number 1. He had them going with Robert Mason Thomas there from Oklahoma. I might have said his name wrong. Regardless, R. Mason Thomas was incredible there for Oklahoma, as they, of course, were a playoff team, and they almost advanced to the second round of the playoffs. Regardless, Akeem Mesidor, R. Mason Thomas, both guys that will fill a big void and just be another great depth defensive lineman for the reigning AFC champions. Now, the reigning Super Bowl champions, we both had going with a cornerback as they're in line to lose a Tariq Woolen this offseason, potentially the Super Bowl MVP as well. But as far as defense goes, I had them going with Brandon Cisse. It's going back to the well of drafting athletic muscle freaks out of South Carolina, because last year Nick Emmanwori fit the same exact description as Brandon Cisse, where they're a bit raw, they're not the most complete player, but they're athletic freaks and they can fly around and make a bunch of plays. It worked with Emmanwori. I say you go back to the well and get Brandon Cisse there from South Carolina. But in this world, Mel Kiper has Avion Terrell falling all the way to 32 and going to the reigning Super Bowl champions. But that's it, man. Let me know what you think, as this is the first mock video of the offseason. If you guys want more of these, please let me know. But hey, main channel fans, if you're seeing this, I know it's a bit different, but head over to our draft channel. I'll link it in the comment section below, and go subscribe. We're on the road to 100 subscribers. It is a new channel, and my birthday is in about a week. So if we can get there, man, we're right there. It would be a dream come true. So I want to thank you guys all for all the support, and that's it. Let me know what you guys think about Mel Kiper's mock draft 2.0.